Michael Reynolds scratched his 3-day-old neck bump while studying English assignments at his desk. He grimaced as his fingernails grabbed the sore region and decided to tell Sarah again when she got home from the newspaper office, the last time he tried to show her. She hardly looked up from her laptop, dismissing it as a spider bite, despite his mounting concern over the throbbing ache that kept him awake at night.
6 weeks later, Michael lay unconscious in the ICU, infected, as doctors pondered whether to save him without injuring his vocal cords. High school English instructor may never talk again. Sarah cleaned out his desk drawer to find insurance documentation and found Michael's journal with his symptoms and urgent appeals for help, as well as information into their home's dark history, which made her blood freeze. Like and comment with the city you're watching. Let's continue the story. Maine's Millfield proudly displayed its past. Victorian homes with elaborate gingerbread trim flanked the main streets, but deep pine forests encroached from all sides, shadowing the village even in daytime. At the end of Willow Lane was Michael and Sarah's 3-story Victorian with peeling blue paint and a creaky wraparound porch. 3 months earlier, they bought it at a bargain to start over, after Boston's unpleasant memories. Michael Reynolds' lovely brown eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, calm smile, and attentive stare made his high school English students feel seen. At 30, he was known for reaching problematic youths and staying late to assist them write poetry and prose. Behind his placid exterior, Michael battled shadows. After his father's suicide the year before, he struggled with unanswered questions and melancholy that he tried to disguise. Sarah Mitchell Reynolds lived like a deadline-driven person. She was 28 and had both friends and detractors at the Millfield Chronicle for her investigations into local corruption. Her dark hair was generally pulled back in a quick ponytail, her clothes worn for practicality, and her mind always 3 steps ahead for the next story. Her ambition drove her achievement but distracted her from her home life. Their neighbor Thomas Winters observed their house unsettlingly from his veranda across the street. His stooping stature and piercing blue eyes were an everyday sight at 75. He told them the day they moved in, his worn palm clutching Michael's arm with surprising power, that house had stories best kept buried. Hairline fractures, missed dinner dates, job calls, and discussions about having children had strained their marriage. Michael wished for kids. Sarah wanted to settle into her profession. Neither could have predicted how these small fissures would soon widen enough to show an abyss underneath them. Michael found the bump while washing before work. He was moving his hand over his neck when he felt something little and elevated below his hairline. Stepping out of the shower, he wiped condensation from the mirror and twisted his neck to see a red spot the size of a pencil. Eraser, slightly raised with a tiny white center, probably a spider bite, remembering the attic cobwebs he'd cleared over the weekend. As he entered their bedroom where his wife was hastily ready for work, Michael called Sarah, towel around his waist. "Think something bit me." He turned and showed her his hair off his neck. Sarah looked up, one arm in her blazer. Refocusing on the earring she was fixing, she advised applying antibacterial lotion. Big Robertson case meeting with the editor, going late. My biggest story may be coming. Her eyes sparkled with anticipation. Michael insisted, "It's been itching all night," but Sarah was already getting her bag from the chair. "The medication cupboard has Benadryl," she said over her shoulder. "Get calamine lotion on the way home. I love you." The front door banged before he could react. The bulge had increased somewhat, and the itching had become a dull throb that pulsed with his heartbeat by evening. After 8, Sarah went home to find Michael marking papers at the kitchen table with a cold compress on his neck. Her question, "Still bothering you?" As she set down a little drugstore bag and unpacked a sandwich, her dark circles indicated a tough day. "Getting bad," Michael confessed. "Maybe I should see Dr. Phelps tomorrow." "Yes," Sarah nodded distractedly.
Sorry for being late."
Robertson's finances are a jumble of offshore accounts and sham corporations. I spent the afternoon at City Hall. She stopped and looked at him. "Let's see." Sarah touched Michael's neck for the first time, carefully probing the irritated area. "It looks angrier," she said. "Probably an infected bite. Benadryl should relieve itching tonight." Michael watched Dr. Eleanor Phelps examine the quarter-sized bulge with a frown 2 days later. After 15 years serving Millfield residents, Dr. Phelps was in her mid-40 seconds with prematurely silver hair. She stepped aside, judging it an infected hair follicle. Not unusual, especially in wet ancient dwellings. "To be safe, I'll prescribe oral and cream antibiotics." Scribbled on her prescription pad. "Visit us again if it doesn't improve in a week." Sarah missed dinner again that night. Michael ate alone at their dining table. The third time that week, while reading a school library borrowed local history book, he received a text, story breaking, "Don't wait, love you." He moaned, overwhelmed by loneliness. The medications didn't seem to impact his neck bump, which raced with his heartbeat. He saw Thomas Winters standing at the border of their property, peering at the house with an enigmatic face as he rose to clear his plate. Michael saw something frightening on the weekend. A small black center had formed in the hump, like a dark eye. It was purplish, and touching it sent shards of pain down his spine. As Sarah ran about Sunday morning prepared to meet a source, he said, "I don't think this is an infected hair follicle. It's growing and has a black area in the middle." Concern finally broke through Sarah's focus. "Let's see." Her scowl deepened as she studied his neck more thoroughly. "That looks wrong. Maybe see Dr. Phelps tomorrow. I have classes all day," Michael reminded her. "Will you join me after school?" Sarah apologized. "I interview the whistleblower at 4. I've been seeking this for weeks." "Michael, no rescheduling." The hurt must have shown on his face since she quickly added, "I'll try to change things about. Text me what time, and do my best." She missed her appointment. Isolated, Michael saw Dr. Phelps express alarm about the changing appearance and recommend stronger medicines. She advised considering a biopsy if this doesn't better in 3 days. That night, Michael woke up with a scorching neck at 2 a.m. Under the harsh fluorescent light, Sarah's quiet snores from their bedroom continued as he stumbled to the bathroom. The bulge, now a dime and nearly half an inch from his skin, was investigated. The black center had grown, and the skin was taut and shiny. Horror rose in his throat as he gazed, believing he saw the hump pulse independently of his heartbeat. Thomas Winters was waiting by his car the next morning as Michael left for school. "The house is catching you, right?" The old man questioned without hesitation, his large eyes concentrated on Michael's collar, where it hid the bulge. "Excuse me?" Michael retreated involuntarily. "I saw that before," Thomas whispered as he continued. "Start small, always at the neck or behind the ears, where thin skin can reach your mind." Mike remarked, alarmed. "I don't understand what you're saying." Thomas suddenly grabbed Michael's arm with shocking force. "Check the history and others' experiences." He released Michael's arm and hurried away, yelling over his shoulder, before it was too late. "Some houses thrive on sorrow, and this one has been hungry for a while." Without marking papers, Michael spent that evening browsing the local library's Millfield Chronicle microfilm archives from the past 50 years. He felt a weird heaviness as he read local scientist found dead in home on Willow Lane, 1973, mysterious illness claims. Life of Willow Lane resident, 1992, and man suicide linked to prolonged illness, 2005. Their address appears in every piece. 2 weeks after Michael's first visit to Dr. Phelps, the bump became unavoidable, now golf ball-sized. His neck was covered in violent red tendrils that reached his collarbone. The core had darkened to obsidian, and Michael's constant companion was the pain, a throbbing pulse that clouded his thoughts and stole his sleep. Sarah stood in their bathroom doorway early Sunday morning as Michael delicately applied the useless antibiotic ointment. For the first time, she was afraid. "Michael," she said, "this is serious. We must go to ER." He looked at her in the mirror. "I've been telling you that for 2 weeks. The animosity in his voice was obvious. Sarah flinched but didn't argue. "I know. I'm sorry. Please give me my keys." One morning, the Millfield Memorial Hospital emergency room was quiet, and the bright lights sickened everyone. The triage nurse widened her eyes at Michael's neck and pushed them into an exam room quickly. Dr. Warner, a young doctor with sleepy eyes, carefully examined the growth with his fingertips. "This has been developing how long?" he questioned, taking a penlight to check the black core. Michael said, avoiding Sarah's regretful look, "Almost 3 weeks. It started as a spider bite-sized lump and grew." Dr. Warner's expression was inscrutable as he wrote in Michael's chart, "And the antibiotics didn't work. Non-drainage." Michael shook his head. "Nothing helped. It keeps growing, and the pain—" He paused, attempting to describe the scorching sensation. "It feels like something's eating my skin from inside." The doctor frowned. "I worry about MRSA, or deep tissue abscesses. We'll need blood work and perhaps draining." Looking at Michael's iPad medical history, he hesitated. "I see you were treated for depression after your father's passing last year. Has your anxiousness grown recently?" Sarah stiffened alongside him, and Michael was furious. "Not psychosomatic, Dr. Warner offered a reassurance if that was your suggestion. Absolutely not. Stress can impair the immune system, which may explain the infection's resistance to therapy. He gave stronger antibiotics, ordered blood tests and a site culture, and encouraged them to see a dermatologist immediately. Sarah spoke after a lengthy pause on the way home. I should have taken this seriously earlier. Her steering wheel knuckles were white. This story has me hooked. Would it have mattered? Michael asked, looking out the window at gloomy New England, always engrossed in story. The issue is Sarah. The next day, Michael got a fever. He taught his classes despite Sarah's objections, not wanting to disappoint his students before exams. He tried to focus on Emma Parker's Gatsby essay at lunchtime, but his fever had reached 101 and sweat seeped through his shirt. Emma, a quiet 16-year-old with a terrible home situation and intelligence, observed his attention. Are you okay, Mr. Reynolds? She asked as kids left for lunch. You look bad. Michael grinned weakly. Fighting something off. How's home life? Any improvement with Dad, Emma? Girl's face became cloudy. Not really. His illness has made him act strange. She paused. He's also wearing something on his neck, though not as awful as yours. She paused, embarrassed. You live where? Michael asked Emma, feeling chilled. The apartment complex behind the former mill, Cedar Street, is less than a mile from his residence. Jason Morris stopped by after last period, and his usual cheery outlook evaporated at his pal. Jesus, Mike, what the hell is on your neck? Since they started at Millfield High 5 years ago, Michael's best buddy was Jason, who taught history down the hall. Michael grumbled about an infection. Doctors are unsure. Jason worriedly examined him. They let you stroll around like this? Where's Sarah? She should look after you. Simply working, Michael replied. Jason was sitting at their kitchen table with a stack of research papers when Sarah arrived home that night. Jason replied, he's upstairs resting, before she asked. His fever reached 103 an hour ago. He lay down after I gave him Tylenol. Shameful, Sarah put her suitcase down. Staying with him is appreciated. Jason boldly claimed that someone had to. Have you seen his situation? Sarah glanced because whatever's on his neck is unusual. He's suffered while you pursued your story. Sarah's defenses rose. That's unfair. I took him to doctors. You've done little. Jason stopped her. Look where we are now. He stood arranging his belongings. More testing, better physicians and his wife must be present. He approached the door, holding the handle. No doubt he'd help you. If you suffered, he'd move heaven and earth. Sarah cautiously climbed the stairs after Jason left, dreading each step. Michael lay on their bed, breathing shallowly, his monstrous neck bulging apparent from the doorway. She approached carefully, sitting on the mattress edge beside him. In sleep, his pain lines around his eyes and mouth relaxed, making him look more like the man she loved. She gently shifted his hair to observe the growth. The skin around it was heated, strained, and shining. The dark center's depth made her stomach turn. Leaning closer, she thought she noticed a ripple beneath the surface, like something shifting its position. Her heart raced as she recoiled. It couldn't be. Infections didn't change as Michael slept. Sarah sought out his domestic knowledge in his study. A notebook she hadn't seen before, newspaper clippings, and local history library books crowded his generally tidy desk. She noticed daily records concerning his problems and past residents of their home. October 15th, asking S to recheck Nick. She was preoccupied. Pain keeping me awake? The widow's symptoms match a 2005 Franklin suicide piece. October 18th, doctor says infected follicle. Non-working antibiotics. Found Winters family info. Thomas's dad was Dr. Arthur Winters, researcher at Millfield Hospital till 1970s. Owner of our house before. October 23. Black center growing. Too late, I noticed. Thought someone was speaking inside the walls. Thomas cautioned me today. Sarah's hands trembled while turning pages. How did she miss it? How had she not observed her husband's physical ailment and fixation with their house's history? The doorbell's unexpected ring shocked her. Peeping hole. Thomas Winters' grave face was in the porch light. She opened the door against her better judgment. His condition is worsening, right? Without greeting, Thomas asked. His neck thing is expanding. Change color. Sarah watched him. You know that how? I've seen it before. Dropping his voice, Thomas replied. Father saw it too. Why he did what he did in that house. You talking about what? Thomas looked over his shoulder to avoid being overheard. Your husband isn't first. There were others. Constant pattern. In that house always. What pattern? Sarah insisted. Anger and fear surging simultaneously. First, bump, then fever, then voices. Thomas's wide eyes stared at her. Does he hear them yet? Unheard voices. Before Sarah responded, Michael's harsh scream followed an upstairs smash. Thomas followed her up the steps as fast as his old legs would allow. Michael was crouched over the sink with a broken mirror at his feet in the bathroom. He gasped, feverish and terrified, as it moved. I swear it moved inside Sarah. Shaking, his fingertips hovered near the growth. It was in the mirror. Thomas stood with a pale face in the doorway, while Sarah tried to soothe him. He mumbled, "It's happening faster than with others. The home is hungry." The next morning, Michael collapsed while writing the blackboard in first period. He was crazy with fever and rambling about, whispering in the walls, and something in his neck when the paramedics arrived. Sarah rode with him to the hospital, squeezing his scorching hand, forgetting her article deadline. Dr. Harriet Lambert, an infectious disease specialist from Portland, delivered the life-changing news hours later in a sterile hospital consulting room. "We found 3 cases with identical symptoms in patients who lived in your house during the past 50 years, she stated gravely, sliding a folder across the table to Sarah. "William Franklin was the last. After months with what appears to be your husband's illness, he committed suicide in 2005. Sarah sat alongside Michael's bed, watching his chest rise and fall beneath the thin hospital gown as Millfield Memorial Hospital's ICU fluorescent lights droned. After his breakdown 4 days earlier, his neck growth proceeded despite vigorous intravenous antibiotics. Nearly tennis ball sized, it deformed his neck and skin into an angry red and purple constellation. Dr. Lambert ordered blood cultures, tissue samples, and MRIs, but results were frustratingly unreliable. The only certainty was Michael's decline. He wandered in and out of consciousness with a temperature of 101 to 103. His clarity became scarce and bewildered. The tissue samples demonstrate severe inflammation and necrosis. In this morning's rounds, Dr. Lambert described her quiet, measured voice. "We're currently awaiting specialized cultures. I've never seen anything like this." Lacking sleep, Sarah massaged her crusty eyelids. The last few days had blended into medical halls, whispered conversations, and her growing remorse. She couldn't stop thinking about all the times Michael had tried to show her the increasing bump, and she'd ignored him while focusing on her essay, deadline, and job. In tears, she whispered to his unconscious form, "I should have listened. I'm sorry, Michael." Sarah heard footsteps from the hallway and saw Jason come with a worried countenance. He brought a cardboard tray with 2 coffee cups and a paper bag with apparent hospital food. He placed the tray on the little side table and inquired whether there was any change. Shaking her head, Sarah, testing a novel antibiotic combination. "Dr. Lambert suggests surgery if this doesn't work." Jason gave her a coffee and brought another chair near the bed. "I spoke with principal. The school is organizing a long-term substitute for Michael's lessons and a lunch train for when you bring him home." Pausing, he examined her face. "You look tired. Sarah, when did you last wash and sleep on a real bed at home? Can't leave him." The voice broke as Sarah replied, "Not again." Jason's face relaxed. "You shouldn't run yourself to death. Spend some time at home. Stay with him. Call you immediately if anything changes." Sarah dreaded returning to the vacant house for unknown reasons, but she knew Jason was right. She reluctantly packed and headed for the parking lot after several promises that he would phone promptly if Michael's health altered. Car ride home was weird. She seemed to be seeing Millfield's familiar streets through a warped lens. She suddenly feared the Victorian mansions that had enchanted her, their elaborate facade masking secrets behind veiled windows. As she turned onto Willow Lane, Thomas Winters watched from his porch, pale and quiet. The house was quiet and cold. Sarah lingered in the foyer, listening to the old building's creaks and groans. Were these sounds always there? Was Thomas's cryptic warnings about whispers in the walls the reason she noticed them now? She brushed it off and went upstairs to shower. Hot shower washed away days of hospital dirt, but it did not wipe away her chronic guilt. Sarah examined the tiles where Michael stood that fateful morning, pointing in dread at his neck growth as steam filled the bathroom. He insisted it moved, feverish eyes. She'd initially attributed his assertion to madness, but now, alone in their house with Thomas's warnings, skepticism crept in. Sarah preferred Michael's study to their bedroom after showering. The room was how she left it, his research papers on the desk. Sitting in his chair, she organized the papers to make sense of what he'd found, most of which were from past residents of their home. Before committing suicide in 2005, William Franklin taught high school science. Margaret Chin held the residence from 1990 to 1992 before dying of a strange wasting sickness, according to newspapers. First, Dr. Arthur Winters. Thomas's father resided there from 1965 to 1973. Sarah frowned, noticing a pattern. The previous owners all fell ill unexpectedly. Each had strange ailments that physicians couldn't diagnose and died within 2 years of moving in. She dropped a little leather-bound notepad between two folders while sorting documents. Sarah opened it and saw Dr. Arthur Winters's exact, elegant handwriting from 1971 to his death. From routine research notes, the entries became frightening. June 12, 1971. Early basement wall samples indicate remarkable fungus growth. Spores, unlike my references. More testing needed. September 3, 1971. Self-experimentation is planned. Applying cultured stuff to neck caused predicted irritation. Monitoring progress. December 17, 1971. Beyond expectations, growth has surged. Significant but bearable pain. Have started hearing house-based murmurs. Fever may cause hallucinations, but temperature is only 100.2 D. Sarah's heart raced as she turned the pages, which became increasingly disconnected and frenetic until the last. April 2, 1973. It lives. Lord, help me. Growth is active. It presses against my brain under my skin. Continuous whispers have become a chorus. I'm supposed to open the basement wall to reveal what's inside. Thomas is suspicious yet confused. Not a soul believed me. This can only be stopped one way. Dr. Winters died the next day. The notepad was closed with shaking hands by Sarah. Michael's symptoms matched too closely to be a coincidence. What did that mean? What was in their house's walls and how did it affect Michael? She required basement access. Sarah down the narrow cellar stairs with a torch. Since moving in, they'd ignored this portion of the house except for Christmas decorations and old boxes. The air was humid and smelled like ancient wood. Her spotlight illuminated dust motes like miniature galaxies. Her systematic approach to the stone foundation walls included tapping for hollow spots. Looking closer, the southeast corner beneath their bedroom seemed like a dull echo rather than solid stone. Sarah saw slight seams in the stonework, suggesting a section had been redone. Sarah spun, heart racing, as the cellar door creaked behind her. The lighting illuminated Thomas Winters' lined face at the stairs. "You found his journal," he said. Not a question. "Know anything about this?" Sarah demanded, adrenaline overcoming fear. "Your father, what happened? What links it to Michael?" Thomas groaned, suddenly counting his 75 years. "My father was a fungus researcher. His obsession began when we moved into this house in 1965 and found something in the walls." Sarah was looking at the walls as the old guy approached. He thought he'd discovered a new species. Sarah said he studied, cultivated, and even experimented on himself with it for years, but it killed him. Not directly, Thomas nodded grimly. His mentality was affected by his neck growth. Like your husband's. He heard voices, sure the fungus was intelligent and communicating. He stopped, wrestling with decades-old recollections. His patience ran out. He used his wartime revolver. "Why didn't you tell us we moved in?" Sarah asked, fearful and angry. "You understood this house's power." "I tried," Thomas said defensively. "I told you the house has hidden stories the first day. After seeing the symptoms start, I informed your spouse, but who would believe an old man's rants about a murderous fungus in the walls?" His voice grew harsh. "The same fungus in your husband?" "None." As she realized the ramifications, Sarah's flashlight flickered. "What's on Michael's neck killed my father, William Franklin, and Margaret Chen?" Thomas pointed at the wall. "It dwells there, spreading spores through air ducts and water lines. Few people are susceptible, but your husband's immune system is weak." "But that's absurd," Sarah said. "If you're right, why hasn't the CDC quarantined this place? Why is the fungus unidentified?" "Before his death, my father destroyed his research," Thomas replied. "And because the medical system ignores every illness as something else, an infection, one tumor, mental sickness," he accused her with his eyes. "Much like you ignored your husband's fears until it was too late." Sarah recoiled when the thorn impacted. "So now what? How can we aid Michael? We must find what my father hid first," Thomas remarked, approaching the wall. "He sealed something here before dying. His note claimed he was working on a fungus-killing method but never finished." They studied the stonework. and removed a loose portion with some effort. Behind it was a little hollow with a corroded but complete metal box. Vials of desiccated material, tissue sample slides, and a little notebook with chemical formulae were within. "This could save your husband," Thomas replied, carefully repacking the package. "We need someone who can comprehend it and finish my father's work." Jason's number flashed on Sarah's phone before she could react. Dread filled her stomach as she replied, "Sarah, return here." Jason strained his voice with fear. Michael turned, getting ready for emergency surgery. The surgery took 4 hours. Dr. Lambert and neurosurgeon Dr. Kapoor removed the tumor while preserving tissue and nerves. When they entered the waiting area, they looked sad. Dr. Lambert said, surgical masks still on her neck, that we've removed most of the bulk. However, filaments reached deeper than expected, some dangerously near his carotid and vagus nerves. "That means what?" Sarah questioned, holding the small metal box like a talisman. "We couldn't acquire everything," Dr. Kapoor intervened, his accent softening his sharp comments. "We removed strange things. The tissue's structure is unique in my 20 years of practice." Sarah said she needed to show you what they found. Opening the box, Dr. Lambert became interested in the chemical formulation notebook. "This is amazing," she said. "If you're right and this fungus has killed people for decades," she glanced up, her professional tone replaced by real concern. "I must consult CDC colleagues. We'll stabilize Michael and watch for regrowth at the surgery site." Jason comforted Sarah's shoulder while the doctors took the box. "Go sit with him. His rehabilitation is underway." Michael appeared weak and pallid against the white linens in the recovery room. Despite his heavy bandage, a drainage tube carried reddish fluid from his right neck. Monitoring devices beeped regularly, the only sign of life beneath his silence. Sarah clasped his hand on a chair beside the bed, careful not to disrupt the IV line. "I'm here, Michael," she whispered. "No more leaving, I swear." His fingers trembled in hers, apparently in response. Following days had a weird cadence. Sarah spent time at the hospital and at home, where she and Jason meticulously searched the basement for Dr. Winters' samples and notes. Thomas joined them when he was strong, filling in information about his father's dying months. Emma Parker placed a handmade card on Michael's bedside table at the hospital, her youthful face gloomy. Afterward, she told Sarah in the hallway that her dad was sick. "Doctors claim it's a cyst, but it looks like Mr. Reynolds." A chill hit Sarah. "Emma, where does your dad work?" "Girl, he's a contractor. He's remodeling ancient properties around town, including one on Cedar Street, Cedar St., home of the Winters family before Willow Lane." Dr. Lambert's concern increased when Sarah told him. "We must explore this relationship," she urged. "This fungus in many Millfield buildings could pose a public health risk." Michael's condition stabilized, but didn't improve. He briefly regained consciousness to clasp Sarah's hand, or murmur a few words. The surgical site was healing, but Dr. Lambert worried about the deep filaments they couldn't remove. She said traditional antifungals don't work within one consultation. Using Dr. View Winters' notebook formulas to test substances is slow without understanding what we're testing. As Sarah slept in the chair beside Michael's bed, his voice became clearer and stronger than it had been since his admission. He told Sarah, eyes awake and aware for the first time in days, "I know its desires." "Michael," she leaned forward to summon the nurse. "You're awake. You feel what?" His grip on her wrist was startling. "Pay attention. Not just in our house, it's in the walls. It's spreading through town's antiquated water lines and shared foundations." Thomas's brilliant eyes suggested he knew more than he said. His father developed it, not just studied it. He intended to utilize it. "Use for what?" Sarah, concerned by his passion, asked. Michael glanced past her to the entryway, where a nurse had answered the call button. "Ask about experiments." After whispering, he fell onto the pillows, depleted strength suddenly. "Ask about the kids and doctor." Nora Lambert stared at the culture plates through the hospital lab glass, fascinated and frightened. The results from Michael's surgically excised tissue 48 hours later were unlike anything she had seen in 20 years of infectious disease. The fungal structures under the microscope showed a complex network of filaments with an extraordinary affinity for neural tissue, explaining why the growth was spreading toward Michael's brainstem. She told Sarah the next morning in the little consulting room next to the ICU that it's a species of Ophiocordyceps, tropical forest mushrooms that parasitize insects. "Doctor, this strain has adapted to humans." Lambert displayed genuine concern in his normally calm manner. "Our treatment is slowing the growth of filaments we couldn't remove surgically." "Can it die?" Sarah questioned, her voice firm despite her terror. Dr. Lambert paused. Synthesizing chemicals based on Dr. Winters's notes is experimental. The fungus appears resistant to traditional therapies. She touched a large medical file. More worrying is what occurs if these filaments reach brainstem nerve clusters. Then what? Dr. Lambert warned that Michael may lose his capacity to talk forever, based on our progression and your prior cases. Sarah felt the room tilt as the implications hit her. Michael, who illustrated literature for his kids and could memorize Shakespeare, proposed to her with his poems silenced forever. We have how long? 48 hours, possibly less. Dr. Lambert looked sympathetically but unwavering. Our next surgery is tomorrow morning. Due of their placement, these filaments pose major dangers. Sarah left the consultation room dazed, walking straight to Michael's room. Despite the tubes and cables linking him to equipment that monitored his perilous health, he rested peacefully as she left him. Though his neck bandage was smaller, the skin around it remained discolored, with subtle dark lines beneath the surface like roots from a concealed seed. I'll fix it? She took his hand and murmured, I swear. Michael opened his eyes slowly, realizing. Sarah, his thin voice was hardly audible. Where am I? She said. You're hospitalized, leaning closer. You're recovering from a serious illness. She found the untruth biting. Michael's gaze snapped. He urgently told Thomas not to trust his father or the experiments. Before continuing, his eyes rolled back and body stiffened. The monitors around him shrieked as he had a seizure, his limbs twitching wildly against the shackles the nurses had placed as a precaution following his prior episodes. Doctors pushed Sarah aside to give him anti-seizure Medicat and stabilize his airways. She watched helplessly from the doorway, remembering Michael's warning about Thomas and his earlier babbling about what it wants and the children. Dr. Kapoor left the room with a somber attitude once Michael stabilized. He said the seizure implies progression without explanation. Fungal filaments disrupt neuronal circuits. We must act immediately. We can't wait tomorrow. Sarah said, do whatever you need, her determination growing. I need 2 hours beforehand. Something needs checking. The drive to Thomas Winter's house was under 10 minutes. For Sarah, it was like entering another world. The elderly man's Victorian mansion resembled theirs, except it was much run down. The home seemed half blind due to paint peeling from the elaborate trim and boarded windows. Thomas reluctantly answered her knocking, his wide eyes narrowing as he recognized her. Mrs. Reynolds, I expected you and your husband at the hospital. Sarah pushed past him into the dimly lighted lobby, saying Michael had emergency surgery in 2 hours. Before that, I need the truth. All of it, Thomas murmured, cautiously closing the door. I don't understand. Sarah pressed the experiments, observing his face. Your father was cultivating, using, and studying the fungus, according to Michael. Thomas's face collapsed, decades of serenity gone in an instant. He appeared elderly, crushed by secrets too long carried. You must understand, he said, trembling. My father was smart. He saw promise where others saw danger. For what? Sarah insisted. Thomas reclined in a worn armchair and motioned for Sarah to join him. The fungus has particular brain effects. My father noticed it made people suggestible. He thought it may treat mental illness, addiction, and crime. Sarah felt ice in her veins. His experiments were on individuals. Thomas nodded slowly. Start with volunteers, then others. He consulted state hospital patients, homeless people, and orphanage children. His hands shook. He assumed children's neurological pathways would adapt better to the fungus. OMG, Sarah breathed. How many? Thomas, unable to look at her, replied, 12 children in 3 years. Most initially improved behaviorally, becoming more obedient and less aggressive. Dad felt he was helpful. He swallowed deeply, pausing, till they deteriorated. Paralysis, seizures, weird preoccupation with walls and hidden spaces. The authorities investigated and closed his practice after 3 deaths. Sarah, horror and revulsion rising like vomit, replied, You've known this all along. You knew our house and what may happen to its residents, but you did nothing. Tried to warn you. Thomas objected weakly. Warning us would have required being honest from the start. Sarah sharpened her voice. You let Michael get sick. You witnessed. You probably saw it happen to William Franklin and Margaret Chen. Thomas recoiled at the charge, not knowing how to stop it. The fungus awakens after years of dormancy. I thought the danger was over. Your father's complete records? Sarah insisted. Dr. Lambert is synthesizing an antifungal therapy from his notes, but she needs additional information. Thomas paused, then gently crossed to a corner roll-top desk from a secret container. He pulled out a thicker leather-bound diary than the basement wall one. "This is everything," he remarked, offering it to her. His entire study, including the substances he developed to counteract the fungus when things went awry. Thomas's hands shook when Sarah took the journal. "Yes, more. In my basement. Equipment. Samples he saved. Things I should have thrown away decades ago." Sarah was leaving, journal closely held. "Within an hour, Dr. Lambert's team will arrive. You'll reveal everything." Jason from the hospital called her as she reached her car. "Sarah, where are you?" "Michael is being prepped for surgery." She started the engine and said, "I'm going." "And Jason, I found our stuff." In the surgical waiting room, uncomfortable seats and stale coffee stretched minutes into hours while Sarah paced the worn carpet and stared at the corner's dim TV. Jason silently supported from nearby. Dr. Lambert developed substances that promised her while working with a team of specialists examining Dr. Winter's comprehensive research notes. Lambert said before joining the surgical team that we're synthesizing them to infuse straight into the tissue after surgery. "Even if this succeeds, Sarah," she said, touching her arm, "you need to prepare. Damage may be irreversible." Sarah begged any deity that would listen as the 4th hour of operation passed. She would sacrifice her profession, goals, and everything if Michael survived with his mind and voice. Dr. Kapoor came from the operation suite's double doors, with surgical caps on but mask off. Sarah quickly rose, scrutinizing his face for clues. With fatigued shoulders, he replied, "We've excised the residual fungus mass and applied Dr. Lambert's antifungal substance directly to the tissues." Sarah inquired, his voice scarcely breathing, "And the fungal filaments shrank on contact, which is promising." Dr. Kapoor seems cautious. "Some filaments reach the vocal cord controlling vagus nerve. We won't know the damage until he wakes up." "When can I see him?" "His rehabilitation is underway. A nurse will pick you up when he's stable." Michael looked smaller than ever in the ICU, dwarfed by medical apparatus around his bed. His right neck was tightly wrapped, and a ventilator helped him breathe. The only sound in the room is monitor beeping and repetitive whoosh and click. Sarah held his hand gently between hers as she sat alongside him. "Found the answers." "Michael," she said, "I know what happened. You'll be fine." She wasn't sure if she was comforting herself or him. Hours passed. Visiting nurses checked vital signs and adjusted prescriptions. Dr. Lambert dropped by to report that the tissue lab study showed hopeful fungal die-off. The window looked out over Millfield as dawn painted the sky pearl and rose. Michael's fingers trembled against hers mid-morning, his eyelids twitching. Heart racing, Sarah leaned forward. "Can Michael hear me?" He gently opened his eyes, recognizing her face after uncertainty. Around the ventilator tube, his lips moved but made no sound. The vital sign change notified Dr. Lambert, who arrived shortly afterward. After a quick check, she slowly withdrew the ventilator, letting Michael breathe. "Don't speak yet," she said. "Your throat will be painful from the tube and surgery near your vocal cords." Michael nodded gently, wincing. A shaking palm hovered above the bandage on his neck. Sarah promised him it's gone. They got everything this time. And frantic gaze followed his relief as he indicated weakly for a pen. Jason, who was sleeping in a window chair, hurriedly pulled a small notepad and pen from his pocket. Michael wrote shakily yet legibly. "Thomas cooperates," she told him. "Everything his father researched was given to us. That's how they created the effective treatment." She hesitated, then added, "Michael, he told me everything about the experiments in kids. It's worse than anticipated." An additional note, "Others Emma's dad. They're treated." Sarah agreed. When Dr. Lambert discovered the fungus and produced the antifungal chemical, other patients with similar symptoms were screened. Emma's father is one of 4 cases. Michael briefly closed his eyes. Every line on his face showed fatigue. He wrote another house inquiry when he opened them. Sarah strongly stated that we would not return. None of us are. The CDC quarantined our house and Thomas's. All potentially affected properties are being investigated. Relief softened Michael's face. He closed his eyes again. Sleeping, he dropped the pen. Sarah grabbed it and the notepad and saw that he'd written something else on the preceding page, a message he'd presumably decided not to show her. "I could hear you every word." Sarah cried as she realized the connotation. Michael heard her dismissals, impatience, and prioritization of work over his pain throughout his illness, delirium, and unconsciousness. He still held her hand while sleeping. The monitor showed Michael's latest vital signs as Dr. Lambert approached quietly. His numbers are rising, she said. It appears the antifungal ingredient works. Next scans will tell us more, but I'm cautiously optimistic. Since learning of the hazards, Sarah's query about his voice had been tormenting her. Too early. Dr. Lambert admitted that vagus nerve injury may be transitory or permanent. Sarah nodded, accepting this uncertainty. Even if Michael recovered his voice, nothing would be the same. Their marriage, home, and way of life in Millfield were rotten, full of secrets and neglect. Sarah felt guilty and hopeful as she watched him sleep, his face finally serene after weeks of anguish. They rebuilt somehow. This time, she would hear all he said, aloud or not. 3 weeks following the second surgery, Michael Reynolds labored over a new notebook outside his hospital room window, autumn sunlight streaming across his lap. The previous one, his anguish and Sarah's neglect, was sealed in an evidence bag by CDC authorities investigating Millfield's fungus outbreak. This new journal chronicled his everyday effort to regain his voice. After surgery, the fungal growth was removed, but his vagus nerve was severely damaged. Dr. Lambert's antifungal drugs stopped the infection and cleared it from his system, but it couldn't fix the damage. Michael's rasping voice required intentional effort to speak, leaving him fatigued after even brief talks. Mornings consisted of speech treatment, afternoons of specialists monitoring his recovery. He lived through words and inspired generations of students with his passionate readings of Whitman and Dickinson, so the psychological toll may have been worse than the physical. Now limited to scrawled notes and laborious murmurs, Sarah entered the room with a small duffel bag, her face brightening when she found him near the window instead of in bed. She treasured these modest indicators of development, which added to her cautious hope for his recovery. "Ready to go home?" she asked, placing down his discharge clothes bag. Michael hesitantly wrote above the journal. Home. The word now had many meanings. Plastic sheets covered the windows, and biohazard warnings kept their Victorian property on Willow Lane isolated. The CDC probe now included 17 Millfield properties connected by 1,960 seconds water pipes, or building materials from Dr. Winter's experiments. Sarah clarified when she saw his hesitancy. To rent. The hospital bed arrived yesterday, and Jason helped me arrange the living room to face the garden. Michael nodded, smiling but not quite. His fingertips softly traced the elevated scar tissue from his ear to his collarbone on the right side of his neck. His unintentional gesture showed his trauma. Sarah said softly, "We don't have to leave today if you're not ready." Michael shook his head and scribbled ready in his journal. Need to leave. A final round of testing and consultations delayed their discharge until late afternoon. Dr. Lambert reviewed Michael's prescription regimen one last time, emphasizing the significance of maintaining antifungal treatment for at least another month and requiring follow-up scans. She reminded them, "We must prevent regrowth." Even though it appears impossible, an orderly wheeled Michael out of the hospital past Emma Parker's younger brother's treatment in the pediatric wing. 8 Millfield children got the fungal illness, all with early symptoms like Michael's bump. Dr. Winter's extensive research and note-derived antifungal chemical. Successful early intervention prevented Michael's brain damage. Sarah visited each family to comfort and enlighten. As a tiny atonement for her role in the outbreak's delayed reaction, her journalistic instincts ultimately served others rather than her career goals. On the other side of town from their isolated Victorian was a little ranch-style rental. The single-level layout accommodated Michael's restrictions, and its modern construction provided safety against the danger that had penetrated Millfield's old dwellings. Sarah had filled it with plants and books to bring normalcy to their chaotic lives. Michael halted in the entryway, taking in their future house. Sarah watched him carefully, wondering if she'd made the correct decisions and if her attempts could make up for her irresponsibility. "It okay?" When silence was too lengthy, she asked. Michael nodded, then carefully lifted his hand to his throat to prepare to speak. As a whisper, he said, "It's perfect. Thank you. Bye." The first night home was a relief and revelation after hospital surveillance and interruptions. Michael slept poorly, awakening from nightmares where the growth returned, bigger and more aggressive. Sarah held his hand in the darkness and reassured him with a calm voice. The fungus was gone, so they started afresh. Morning brought the mundane obstacles of healing outside the hospital's protected structure. Michael worked hard to shower, dress, and eat. Sarah patiently anticipated his needs and helped without compromising his independence. The rental car of Michael's parents from Boston pulled into the driveway as Sarah was helping Michael sit on the porch swing that afternoon. Eleanor and James Reynolds had visited the hospital several times. their astonishment and anguish at their son's condition scarcely masked by forced cheerfulness. Nothing changed today. Eleanor smiled too brightly, and James shook too hard as they met Michael, avoiding his angry neck scar. Eleanor placed a large jar of homemade soup on the porch railing, saying, "You're looking stronger already. This fresh air must be healthy for you." Michael nodded to save his voice for important matters. He told Sarah that speaking was humiliating and terrible. Each rasping whisper reminded him of what he'd lost, each strained sentence a weak replica of his flowing, expressive voice, his best teaching tool. James coughed awkwardly. "We're researching Boston specialists. Mass General's nerve regeneration program has shown promise in cases like yours." Eleanor soon added, "We found a great apartment nearby, fully accessible ground floor. You could move in next month when stronger." Sarah's heart tightened. They hadn't considered leaving Millfield, but the offer made sense. Michael lifted a hand to his throat, keeping his expression neutral. What was left for them was bitter memories and continuous inquiries. "Need to think about it," he muttered, plainly suffering. "Yes, of course." James retreated. "I wanted to inform you of your alternatives." The tension persisted when the talk switched to James's retirement plans, cousins, and old family friends. When Michael went to rest, Sarah led his parents to their car, preparing for the conversation. "He needs particular care." Once out of earshot, Eleanor said, "Sarah, care unavailable in this size town?" James said, his voice fading. "He needs to leave." "What happened?" He hesitated, then advanced. "From reminders of his untreated health." They felt the accusation, unsaid yet clear. Sarah missed the signs. Sarah made work a priority. Sarah failed to safeguard their son. "Michael and I will discuss all options," Sarah responded calmly. Their verdict couldn't surpass her self-recrimination, his choice. After his parents left, Sarah found Michael on the bed with his new journal open. She sat near him, keeping a tiny distance, one of many new boundaries in their relationship. She said, "They mean well." Michael nodded and typed, "You're blamed." Sarah replied that they have every right to, feeling guilty again. "My fault." Michael shook his head decisively, writing again, "Not your fault. The fungus? Winters? Not you." Sarah, tearing up, said, "I should have listened. You told me something was wrong, but I was too focused on my tale and profession. If I'd taken you seriously from the start, Michael would have stopped her self-flagellation by covering her hand." He began his next sentence aloud, the hoarse whisper demanding her full attention. "Was upset for ages." Paused to gain strength for the following statement. "I heard your remorse and regret in the hospital." Another pause. "This time longer. Not useful for either of us." Sarah stayed mute, thinking he had more to say. "Need to move forward." He continued, "No return, unchangeable. What happened? How can you forgive me so easily?" Tears fell as Sarah asked. Michael resorted to writing when talking got too difficult. "Not simple, but vital. For us both. Otherwise, fungus wins. This destroys us even after it's gone." His remarks surprised Sarah with their insight. She was so focused on atonement, on punishing herself for her failures, that she hadn't considered the idea that the fungus's final injury to their marriage was self-recrimination. Sarah recognized how much they had lost, and what was worth fighting for, as the autumn light faded outside their window. Millfield's first snowfall 6 weeks after Michael's hospital release turned the modest village into a beautiful postcard image that hid the evil behind its pleasant exterior. Sarah watched large flakes move across the lowering afternoon sky from their rental home's kitchen window. Her neglected mug of cold tea. The anchor's voice sharpened as she updated us on the Millfield fungus as the television mumbled the day's news behind her. It was distressing to find Thomas Winters, the son of the doctor accused of causing the Millfield fungus outbreak, dead at his home yesterday evening. According to sources close to the investigation, the death may have been self-inflicted. Winters was working with CDC investigators to identify the unusual fungus strain that has hospitalized over 20 residents in 2 months. Sarah turned from the window, surprised by the news. In recent weeks, Thomas had only spoken to CDC officials and refused Sarah's requests for more information on his father's research. His apparent suicide changed Michael's and Millfield's story. A frigid wind blew through the front door, and Jason Morris stamped snow off his boots on the welcome mat. He drove Michael to speech therapy 3 times a week, one of many subtle kindnesses that helped them adjust home. Jason unrolled his scarf and said, "It's really coming down out there, slippery roads." Michael followed, going slowly but steadily with a cane. a temporary assistance caused by muscle weakness from his protracted illness, not the fungal infection. Before Sarah closed the door, his cheeks were crimson and his breath evident in the frigid doorway. She questioned how therapy helped Michael with his coat. He still lifted his hand to his throat before speaking. "Progress," he whispered, clearer than a week earlier. "Dr. Bennett," voice cords respond. Sarah grinned with joy. Small improvements became milestones. Each rejoiced as a win over their suffering. "That's great, Michael." Jason pointed to the TV where the news anchor was now reporting weather. "Did you hear about Thomas?" Sarah confirmed now. "They're saying suicide." Michael scowled, grabbing for his notes for difficult speech. He showed the page and wrote fast. "I doubt it. Too convenient timing." Jason glanced at Sarah. Michael's worry about foul play may be a psychological reaction to his tragedy. Perhaps mistrust was warranted after learning about Dr. Winter's experiments and cover-up. Sarah said, "Let me make some calls," feeling journalistic. Her brief Millfield Chronicle career ended as she focused on Michael's recuperation. The paper and local law enforcement remained her connections. "Officer Daniels owes me for last year's profile." Jason helped Michael sit on the sofa and arrange the throw pillows to support his improving posture, while Sarah called from the home office. "You think Thomas's death is suspicious?" Jason asked softly. Michael nodded, writing again. He knew too much. Some wanted him quiet. "Whose research does the CDC have? Antifungal therapy works. Anything left to hide?" Michael hesitated, then wrote, "Government involvement. Dr. Winters didn't work alone," before Jason responded. New facts made Sarah nervous when she returned. She said Thomas didn't commit suicide. "Officer Daniels told me off the record it was a suicide ruse. Evidence doesn't match. No message, no gunpowder residue on his hands, and the wound angle is improper for self-infliction." Michael whispered murder, his hoarse voice chilling more than the word. "But why?" Jason asks. "Why now?" Sarah slumped heavily in the armchair opposite from them. "I guess I know." Opening a manila envelope from behind her back revealed photocopied paperwork. "You received these by courier this morning at therapy. Day before his death, Thomas sent them." She placed yellowed government letterhead, research funding applications, and late 1960s military correspondence between Dr. Arthur Winters and military authorities on the coffee table. Sarah said, finger-tracing text, that these are secret research program records. In Project Mindshare, Dr. Winters wasn't experimenting alone. A Department of Defense section interested in behavioral modification funded him. They wanted docile, controllable people. "Mind control," Jason replied bluntly. His tone showed disbelief. "That sounds conspiratorial." "Except it's genuine," Sarah said. "Programs from that time exist. MK Ultra. Artichoke was where the government tested drugs, hypnosis, and other methods to control people. Another path they were exploring." Michael's hand traced his neck scar, as he often did when upset. "This fungus damages more than nerves," he wrote. "Brain chemistry changes, making you suggestible." Sarah confirmed these records indicate that. Dr. Winters found the fungus in his basement, ours, but the government funded its cultivation and investigation. He experimented on children more than merely for treatment. A potential weapon was demonstrated. Jason suddenly paced the small living room. "This is ridiculous. Your claim implies that someone is still trying to hide this knowledge." Sarah finished. "Thomas knew everything about the program. He knew test site names, dates, and places, but he died." Michael wrote hurriedly. "Other patients, Emma's dad. Are they safe?" Sarah nods. "They're all in the hospital for treatment, and the CDC has tightened security after the first researcher's death." She paused, then added, "The one who died in a vehicle accident the day after examining operation samples." The ramifications left the three speechless. This fungus outbreak in Millfield wasn't only a medical crisis or a scientist's immoral research from decades ago. A purposefully buried government program with deadly consequences resurfaced. Michael was the first to speak, his voice stronger than normal despite the pressure, telling everyone to expose it. Jason answered with photocopied paperwork from a dead guy and the word of a teacher recuperating from a brain ailment. "They'll discredit you in 5 minutes." "He's right," Sarah said hesitantly. "More irrefutable evidence is needed." Michael said that Thomas's house must be larger. After that, the strategy came together fast. Jason stayed with Michael as Sarah used her press credentials to fake her way past the cops at Thomas's residence. She would seek proof, samples, or anything else to support Thomas's startling assertions in his final communication. Michael grabbed Sarah's hand just before she left, looking intense. Though hesitant, he spoke. "Take care. They killed him. Could kill you. I'll be all right." She squeezed his hand to reassure him. "I do this. Get the story. Discover truth." Thomas Winters's Victorian home was still and gloomy under the snow, with yellow police tape around it. Sarah parked a block away and walked with her press pass and a convincing pretext for investigating the suicide ruling. She was surprised that no officers guarded the area, either a symptom of Millfield's low police resources or that the case had been closed despite the signs of foul play. The back door opened with gentle push, its lock damaged during police entry. Sarah entered the messy kitchen with a flashlight. The dust and chemical preservatives in the house reminded her of the hospital after Michael's surgery. She carefully walked the first level, finding only the usual belongings of an elderly recluse. They searched the study where Thomas showed her Dr. Winter's journal, leaving drawers open and papers on the floor. Someone had come before her, seeking the same things. The basement door was open, with a small line of bluish light beneath it, strange considering the house's seeming vacancy. Sarah considered confrontation versus the hidden knowledge. After thinking, she turned off her flashlight and opened the door, cringing at the hinge's gentle creak. The basement's portable LED bulbs cast harsh shadows on a functional lab. Sarah couldn't identify microscopes, centrifuges, and other equipment on stainless steel counters. One wall had glass-fronted cabinets with hundreds of labeled specimens of plant materials, tissue samples, and petri dish cultures. In the center, slumped over a laptop computer, was a man Sarah recognized from photos. "Hello." According to Dr. Arthur Winters, who died 50 years previously, "Sarah, your arrival was anticipated." Sarah stopped on the lowest step, amazement overcoming her journalistic inclination to capture and question. The guy before her was older, but not as old as Thomas's father. He had the same piercing blue eyes and aquiline nose, but his bearing was more imposing. Lower load. She finally said, "You're not Thomas's father. His kid, you." "Very good," he said with a wan smile. "Arthur Winters, Jr. I've been using my father's identity for a while, but it's amazing what people would accept with an elderly man and a credible family background." Sarah shouted, "You killed Thomas," before she could consider approaching a murderer in a basement lab. "My uncle became a liability," Arthur said gently. He struggled with his conscience in his later years. The sending of those documents was just the latest sentimental error. Sarah kept thinking about escape routes, weapons around, and whether she could be heard if she shouted. In addition to survival instincts, the reporter needed to grasp and unearth the complete story before it was too late. She cautiously retreated toward the steps, mentioning the fungus. Not only a government experiment terminated in the 1970s. "You've continued." Arthur's chilly smile spread, never reaching his eyes. "I've perfected it, sweetheart. Your husband and others suffered from a new cultivation method. Delivery error. The specimens around him were pointed to. The new version has fewer physical effects. No nerve damage, ugly growth, just obedience." 6 months later, Michael addressed his Millfield High School English class. Walt Whitman's words still shocked him with their intensity and clarity. His voice was raspy, a reminder of what he'd undergone, but it was his again, a tool for communicating the books he loved. He read, "I am the poet of the body and soul." Watching his classmates' reactions to Whitman's impressive statement, "I have heaven's pleasures and hell's sufferings. First I build on myself. I translate into another language." The sentence touched Michael like never before his illness. He converted his pain practically and figuratively into a new language. He spent months relearning how to talk, project, and educate after his final surgery to repair the vagus nerve, an experimental procedure made feasible by the government compensation. Beyond physical rehabilitation, he discovered a new voice as an advocate for others, transparency, and the truth that had nearly been buried. With Thomas Winters, as the bell rung to close the session, Michael dismissed his students after seeing Emma Parker at her desk. She had transformed from the disturbed child he'd met into a confident senior planning to study investigative journalism. "Will your mom speak to the Current Events Club tomorrow?" Emma gathered her books and inquired. Michael nodded. "Wouldn't miss. She wanted your group to read the book before its launch next week." Emma grinned. "Tell her the classroom has a podium and everything. She may present those documents, because Mr. Chen adjusted the projector." After Emma left, Michael slowly gathered his supplies, enjoying his school routines outside his window. Tender green buds appeared on trees that had been bare all winter in Millfield. New life. New beginnings, albeit cliched, were true. He saw their old Victorian on Willow Lane on the way home, raised after the CDC's comprehensive study found fungal infestation throughout. The empty lot symbolized what had been lost and revealed: the decades-long government experimentation program, the deliberate cultivation of the fungus in select Millfield properties, and the generations of residents who had mysterious illnesses unaware of the danger in their walls. Michael found Sarah in her home office with stacks of advanced copies of Colony, the Millfield Fungus, and America's Secret Medical Experiments. Her laptop showed first-day sales figures great enough to guarantee a bestseller status. Most crucially, the book's publishing spurred congressional hearings into Dr. Arthur Winters Sr.'s covert research program, which continued under his son until that icy night 6 months ago. "How was school?" Sarah questioned, rising from her work with a guilty smile. Despite Michael's repeated forgiveness promises, Michael said, "Good," his voice stronger in the afternoon than usual. "Emma's enthusiastic for your presentation tomorrow." Sarah closed her laptop and focused on him, a shift from her pre-illness distractedness. "And you? Thoughts on the CNN interview next week? We can cancel if it's too much." Michael shook his head. "Am ready. Both of us must tell this story." On that fall day that Michael spotted the little bump on his neck, their lives changed in ways neither could have imagined. Sarah abandoned everyday journalism to investigate the Millfield experiments for the book and documentary. Michael returned to teaching with a renewed purpose, founding a foundation to help other fungal illness victims, including Emma's father, who remained largely paralyzed. Their memories of the night that altered everything were clear: a clash with Arthur Winters Jr. at Thomas's basement lab, the tape she took on her phone as he explained the government's interest in the fungus as a compliance tool, her panicked call to Officer Daniels once Arthur realized she was filming. A subsequent raid revealed decades of careful papers documenting the program's progress from Dr. Winters Sr. Arthur awaited prosecution for his uncle's murder and criminal negligence causing the Millfield outbreak, as well as his son's covert fungus refining. Government officials who sponsored his activities were under congressional inquiry. As they revealed their awareness of Millfield residents' risks, their careers collapsed. Michael and Sarah rebuilt their marriage on honesty. The fungus that nearly ruined them highlighted their relationship's cracks. Sarah's ambition overshadowed Michael's needs, while Michael's despair caused emotional distance. They became stronger, more resilient, and more authentic amid disaster. That evening, as they watched the sunset on their porch, Sarah softly touched Michael's neck scar, a gesture that had once been prohibited but now symbolized their joint journey from darkness to light. She nervously added, "I was thinking about what you said last year about starting a family before all this happened." Michael seemed astonished by her. Their argument often revolved around Sarah's reluctance to have children, her work usually coming before his. She added that the book tour will be complete by summer, and that the foundation is stable enough to not need daily management. "Maybe we should take it seriously." Michael's throat clenched with emotion, making speech difficult for reasons unconnected to his physical recuperation. His voice returned with all the warmth and affection that had sustained him through his worst illness days. He simply answered, "I'd love that." As twilight set over Millfield, lights appeared in windows of town homes officially deemed safe after extensive testing, families continuing their lives with a new awareness of what had been hidden for decades. After the fungus that had stealthily spread across their community was identified, confined, and defeated, truth, accountability, and healing grew. Sarah rested her head on Michael's shoulder, and their hands clasped as the first stars appeared in the deepening blue. His neck scar caught the last light of day, a silvery reminder that some wounds never entirely heal, but can become part of a bigger story of survival and renewal with time and care. Sarah said, "We'll be okay," and Michael believed it for the first time in a long time. Listeners, do you hear your partner when they speak quietly? Michael's tale shows how important communication is and how easy we take it for granted. Remember when your kids tugged at your sleeve as you focused on other things? Perhaps they've grown distant and called less. This story of a marriage nearly ruined by neglect resonates because we've all been Sarah, too absorbed to recognize our loved one's misery. Michael's body's fungus symbolizes how silence and disdain can slowly destroy a relationship. Hope exists for their redemption. It's never too late to listen, apologize, and restore confidence. Time becomes most valuable in our elderly years. Don't wait for a crisis to recognize family voices. That minor issue or recurrent concern you've been ignoring could change everything if ignored. Today, listen. Give your complete attention. It could save more than your relationship. It could save lives.